Britain is famed for its democracy and for its Prime Minister, who is the principal minister of the Crown of His Majesty's government and the head of the British Cabinet. Though holding this esteemed position can be turbulent, it rarely comes to physical blows. But for Britain's 21st Prime Minister, Spencer Perceval, the office would have deadly consequences. Spencer Perceval was born on the 1st of November 1762, the second son from the second marriage of John Perceval, the second Earl of Egmont. He attended Harrow School and, in 1780, entered Trinity College, Cambridge, where he was a noted scholar and prize winner. He was a deeply religious boy, and he became closely aligned with evangelicism at Cambridge and remained faithful all his life. As the second child, Spencer had no prospect of a family inheritance and needed to earn a living. On leaving Cambridge in 1783, he began to train as a lawyer at the prestigious Lincoln's Inn. After being called to the bar in 1786, Perceval joined the Midland Circuit, where his family connections helped him to acquire a lucrative practice. In 1790, he married Jane Wilson, the couple eloping on her 21st birthday. The marriage proved happy and fertile, as the couple would have 12 children, 6 sons and 6 daughters, over the following 14 years. Perceval's politics were highly conservative, and he acquired a reputation for his attacks on radicalism. As a junior prosecuting counsel in the trials of Thomas Paine and John Horne Tooke, he was noted by senior politicians in the ruling Pitt ministry. In 1796, having refused the post of Chief Secretary for Ireland, Perceval was elected to Parliament as the Tory member for Northampton and won acclaim in 1798 with a speech defending William Pitt's government against attacks by the radicals Charles James Fox and Francis Burdett. He was generally seen as a rising star in his party. His short stature and slight build earned him the nickname Little P. From 1801 to 1804, Perceval served as solicitor-general and then as attorney-general in the Addington ministry, continuing in the latter through the Pitt ministry of 1804 to 1806. His deep evangelical convictions led him to his unwavering opposition to the Roman Catholic Church and to Catholic emancipation, and his avid support for the abolition of the slave trade, when he worked with fellow evangelicals such as William Wilberforce to secure the passage of the Slave Trade Act in 1807. When Prime Minister William Pitt died in 1806, his government was succeeded by the cross-party Ministry of All the Talents under Lord Grenville. Perceval remained in opposition during this short-lived ministry, but when the Duke of Portland formed the new Tory administration in March 1807, Perceval took office as Chancellor of the Exchequer and leader of the House of Commons. Portland was elderly and ailing, and on his resignation in October 1809, Perceval succeeded him as First Lord of the Treasury, the formal title by which Prime Ministers were then known. On the 4th of October, Perceval kissed the King's hand and set about forming his cabinet. The task was made more difficult by the fact he could find no minister of appropriate stature who would accept the office of Chancellor. Having received 5 refusals for the office, Perceval had to serve as his own Chancellor of the Exchequer, though he declined to accept the salary. Perceval's government faced massive problems at a time of considerable industrial unrest and at a low point in the war against Napoleon. The unsuccessful weltering campaign in the Netherlands was unravelling, and the army of Sir Arthur Wellesley, the future Duke of Wellington, was pinned down in Portugal. At the outset of his ministry, Perceval enjoyed the strong support of King George III, but in October 1810 the king lapsed into insanity and was permanently incapacitated. Perceval's relationship with the Prince of Wales, who became Prince Regent, was initially far less cordial. Perceval upheld his earlier reputation as scourge of radicals, imprisoning William Cobbett, who continued to attack the government from his prison cell. Perceval was faced with the anti-machine protest known as Luddism, to which he reacted by introducing a bill making machine breaking a capital offence. In the House of Lords, the youthful Lord Byron called the legislation barbarous. Despite these difficulties, Perceval gradually established his authority, so that in 1811 Lord Liverpool, the War Minister, observed that Perceval's authority in the House now equalled that of Pitt. Early in 1812, agitation for repeal of the Orders in Council increased. The Orders were important for the role they played in shaping the British war effort against France, but they were also significant for the strained relations they caused between Great Britain and neutral countries, whose trade was affected by them. After riots in Manchester in April, Perceval consented to the House of Commons inquiry into the operation of the Orders. Hearings began in May. Perceval was expected to attend the session on the 11th of May 1812. Among the crowd in the lobby awaiting his arrival was a Liverpool merchant named John Bellingham. Bellingham's presence in the House of Commons lobby on the 11th of May caused no particular suspicion. He had made several recent visits, sometimes asking journalists to confirm specific ministers' identities. Bellingham's activities earlier that day did not overtly indicate a man preparing desperate measures. He had spent the morning writing letters and visiting his wife, business partner Mary Stevens, who was in London at the time. In the afternoon, he had accompanied his landlady and her son on a visit to the European Museum. From there, he made his way alone to the Palace of Westminster, arriving in the lobby shortly before 5 o'clock. In the House, as the session began at 4:30 p.m, the Whig MP, Henry Brougham, a leading opponent of the Orders, drew attention to Perceval's absence and remarked that he ought to be there. A messenger was sent to fetch Perceval from Downing Street, but met him in Parliament Street, Perceval having decided to walk and dispense with his usual carriage. On his way to the House, where he arrived at about 5:15, as Perceval entered the lobby, he was confronted by Bellingham, who, drawing a pistol, shot the Prime Minister in the chest. Perceval staggered forward a few steps and exclaimed, "I am murdered," before falling face down at the feet of William Smith, the MP for Norwich. Smith only realised that the victim was Perceval when he turned the body face upwards, having initially thought that it was his friend William Wilberforce, an MP for Yorkshire, who had been shot. By the time he had been carried into the adjoining Speaker's quarters and propped up on a table with his feet on 2 chairs, Perceval was senseless, although there was still a faint pulse. When a surgeon arrived a few minutes later, the pulse had stopped, and Perceval was declared dead. In the pandemonium that followed, Bellingham sat quietly on a bench as Perceval was carried into the Speaker's quarters. In the lobby, such was the confusion that, according to a witness, had Bellingham walked quietly out into the streets, he would have escaped, and the committer of the murder would never have been known. As it was, an official who had seen the shooting identified Bellingham, who was seized, disarmed, manhandled and searched. He remained calm, submitting to his captors without a struggle. When asked to explain his actions, Bellingham replied that he was rectifying a denial of justice on the part of the government. Despite initial fears that the assassination might be linked to a general uprising, it transpired that Bellingham had acted alone, protesting against the government's failure to compensate him for his treatment a few years previously when he had been imprisoned in Russia for a trading debt. Bellingham's lack of remorse and apparent certainty that his actions were justified raised questions about his sanity, but at a trial he was judged to be legally responsible for his actions. Bellingham's trial was held at the Old Bailey on Friday the 15th of May 1812, and it lasted less than 8 hours. It took the jury less than 15 minutes to return a guilty verdict. Bellingham appeared surprised, but, from Thomas Hodgson's contemporary trial account, was calm, and he described him as, without any demonstrations of that concern which the awfulness of his situation was calculate to produce. Asked by the court clerk if he had anything to say, Bellingham remained silent. The judge then read the sentence in a most solemn and affecting manner, which reduced many of the listeners to tears. First, he damned the crime as abominable in the eyes of God, as it was hateful and abhorrent to the feelings of men. He reminded the prisoner of the short time, a very short time, that remained for him to seek for mercy in another world, and then pronounced the sentence of death itself. You shall be hanged by the neck until you be dead, your body to be dissected and anatomized. Bellingham's execution came on the morning of Monday the 18th. Large crowds gathered outside Newgate Prison, and a force of troops stood by, since warnings had been received of a Rescue Bellingham movement. The crowd was calm and restrained, as was Bellingham when he appeared at the scaffold shortly before 8 o'clock. Bellingham was then blindfolded, the rope fastened, and a final prayer was said by the chaplain. As the clock struck 8 in the morning, the trapdoor was released, and Bellingham dropped to his death. After Perceval's death, Parliament made generous provisions to his widow and children, and approved the erection of monuments. Thereafter, his ministry was soon forgotten, his politics reversed, and he is generally better known for the manner of his death than for any of his achievements.